Given the current situation, Republicans are calling on Democrats to consider stopping the position you've taken, which is to halt some funding to Homeland Security. Do you feel you need to reconsider this position?
So the Republicans are saying that because they launched an illegal, disastrous war in Iran, we should give them permission to continue using ICE to murder American citizens, to allow them to get the funding to tear gas schools. No, we need to stand up for the American citizens that ICE is murdering, the kids that they are terrorizing. They should stop this illegal war, and they should stop ICE from terrorizing our communities. We should demand that they do both things.
Well, the administration would say they have adjusted some of the way they're carrying out policies within DHS.
They have not. They have not. I mean, just because some of the world's and the nation's attention has turned away from Minneapolis, that doesn't mean that they aren't still brutalizing American citizens. We just discovered last week that they had left a Burmese immigrant for dead 5 miles from his home, blind and disabled. This brutality is continuing in the country. We can do two things at once. We can demand that ICE stop murdering American citizens, and we can demand that the administration not send our kids to die for a war that we don't need.
So you believe that with the current funding Homeland Security has, that they are able to protect the homeland in an adequate fashion? That's what I hear you saying.
Listen, I believe that the administration should make a commitment to legally prosecuting the laws of this nation. I don't have any obligation to fund a Department of Homeland Security that is violating the law every day, just like I don't have any obligation to support this war that is illegal as well.
So 3 weeks and counting. It sounds like the standoff is not ending.
Well, if they agree to start adhering to the law at the Department of Homeland Security, they'll have the votes immediately. But listen, this is what the people want. The people want ICE to start behaving legally, and they don't want wars overseas. So I think this is a pretty clear case of Democrats standing with the American people when it comes to domestic crises and international crises.
So back on Iran, if there had been a briefing, if there had been full disclosure of the state of negotiations or an assessment of Iran's nuclear program, would Democrats have been persuadable to support military action? I ask that because the Biden administration initially had reached out to Iran to try to get to a negotiated deal, and they weren't able to get one, in part because they weren't willing to lift sanctions off of the IRGC. So, in other words, are we just in a place where military conflict or confrontation was inevitable, and it just happened to land on Donald Trump's watch?
No, Donald Trump precipitated this crisis, right? He inherited a nuclear agreement that was working, that had put Iran more than a year away from a nuclear weapon. The JCPOA. Against the advice of his advisors, he tossed that agreement out, which brought us to this moment.
It would have expired by now.
But I think Iran would have certainly been willing to extend those provisions if we were still in the agreement. But second, there is no history, there is no experience that shows an air campaign alone will result in positive regime change. In fact, there's not a single example of it in the entirety of American history. An air campaign without at least the threat of a ground invasion, which the administration is ruling out, never results in a democratic rebirth in an authoritarian country. So the plan they have laid out, sustained airstrikes without a ground invasion, is destined to fail. All that will happen at the end of this, most likely, listen, I'm rooting for democracy in Iran, but the most likely outcome here is that hardliners take over the government, they restart their missile program, they restart their nuclear program, and we're just right back at bombing them again and putting American lives and regional lives at risk again in a year or two.
All right. Senator Murphy, thank you for your time this morning.
Appreciate it.
And we'll be right back with a lot more Face the Nation. Stay with us.